What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Detroit Love with another video. I finally got my Galaga box built, so here you go. So in my description of this video, there's a link to the parts list. Now obviously the Raspberry Pi is a key component for this. You have to have a Raspberry Pi. I'm using a 2. I wouldn't recommend you buying a 2 because you can buy 3 for the same price. I definitely recommend you have a keyboard. You might have a keyboard sitting around the house that's a USB keyboard that you can use. If you don't, you can get it. I wanted to stick with red buttons because the original Galaga had red buttons, but you might want a different color. You may want for your buttons to have LEDs. You know, I originally bought this bat joystick top replacement, but then I like the ball now, so so you decide. The HDMI cable, you're gonna need that. This is a shorter version, so you don't have to coil as much. I like having the speaker on the top, the monitor speaker. Sounds great. You got controls there. It blends in. You don't really see it. You may want a larger SD card and put old Nintendo games and all kinds of stuff on it. I'm interested in just arcade only. But you decide how this project ends. This is just how I did it. So the Arcade1Up Galaga box, the whole computer is inside of this little box here that they screwed on the back of this monitor. It's a very simple thing. That's the whole computer. Just like the Raspberry Pi is a computer on a chip, that's the whole computer right there, and it has a power cord that goes in, and it plugs into the monitor to send out the video, and then it also has a cable there that connects the actual, lights up the LEDs behind the monitor, and also there's a ground wire. So once you get that ground wire off, you have to remove that. All it takes to you're good to go out. To start your project. That's the first step. So you want to get your controller board. So you're going to unplug everything that's marked here with the red X and take that off, because you're going to plug those cables, the corresponding cables from your monitor, into the back of it. And so it's real simple. You take the wire hanging from your monitor and you plug it into the spot where you unplug that middle wire. Now you want the red wire to be to the left, and then you plug on the left side of the board. If the HDMI area is pointing down on the left side, you plug in the wire to the that lights up the LED. That's essentially the power. That's essentially your power cable going to the monitor, and the wider core is the one that sends the video signal. And the only thing that you won't have, and I don't have in my parts list, is a little bolt and nut. Now you can take I don't recommend you taking your controller board to Ace Hardware or local hardware store, but I recommend just looking at the hole size and going to a hardware store and just getting a little tiny bolt. I actually, because I had sticky tape behind it on my Street Fighter box, I actually didn't even worry about a bolt because there was sticky tape behind it, and I just took the screw that was on the other box. I just screwed that into that sticky tape, and so then that screw's not going anywhere, and it grounded the wire. That's the whole point of it. But you can see there I have that board on the back because this monitor is vertical. That box, I didn't want to sticky tape that card onto the back of that metal, so I placed that board, just a little piece of board, and I placed that there so that I can mount this controller card onto that cardboard instead of the metal back of the monitor. So this is a really simple process. I don't know why it's taking so long poking around with this thing. But the key thing here is that prior to doing anything, you want to have your image onto your SD card.
The power cord that came
That's got to
with
be
the
done before you do
Galaga
this.
box.
You can do this while you're still
Arcade1Up
contemplating
plugs right into this to
whether
power
you're
this
going
up
to
as
do
well.
this. Because when you plug, if you plug your Raspberry Pi into this box without having the operating system on that card, it's not going to do anything. It's not even going to boot up on the screen. It's going to be, you're going to think something's wrong with that video card, but it's not, because the computer needs to have something to boot to. And if you don't have the SD card in there, or you don't have a bootable image on it, nothing's going to happen. So the image that I'm using is called the 32 gigabyte arcade only by Wolfenhaus. It's a fantastic image that just has all old school arcade games, not console games, not the Super Nintendo and PlayStation and all that. You can do all those things if you want, and you may need to plug in a USB joystick to do so, but I wanted an authentic arcade experience, and so that's the image I went with. So just Google how to install the Wolfenhaus 32 gig arcade only image into your drive, and there's plenty of videos that walk you through doing that. But that's what I recommend. But again, you can go with whatever image that you want. I recommend an image because the image comes with everything you need. So you just plug in your SD card onto your computer and use the program to burn the image once you download it. Now, downloading is going to take a long time, even with 32 gig. If you go any bigger, it's going to be probably a week or so. It's crazy to download that. So make sure you find out what image you want and get that ready before you even start this project. You're going to be fine with the one that I have in the video. But these stop bit, these things work wonderful. We're going to use these now to install the hole for the joystick. So I went with a San Juan joystick, and it really feels great. It has a short staff, and I think it works perfectly for this game. Now, before you even start this, it'd be a good time, while you got everything off of this board, is to spray this with a clear coat. So I did my clear coat after the fact instead of before the fact. So I got scratch there, and I got some fingerprints on the edge there, a couple like bubbles on this edge, and there's something over there. But for the most part, don't look too bad. Very shiny. See how shiny it is. See that reflection on there. That should hold up pretty well. But do this before you put your new holes in and everything. You can even spray another coat on after you're done. You can see here, I told you how those holes are a little bit bigger than that, but they're fine. Just take your time. I covered up this while I put the coat on. Oh, that didn't work out well. Look at that. Huh. Look like that took off some paint. Ah, that's messy. Not sure what's going to happen there. I can clean that up a nut. Is that tape or is that damage? Man, that's not pretty. So when you take that off, make sure you only have that tape on the white part there. I could have just let that white get sprayed. That looks horrible. But again, we shouldn't have to do these things. Arcade1Up should have taken care of this for us. Oh well. Guess it's better than what it would be if it didn't have any coat on it. But I still have one coming from the company to cover it up, but I'd rather not have that plastic on it if I can. We'll see what happens. Less than $4. You can get it from Amazon with everything else, or you can run down to your local Walmart and get the same or similar. But this is a good time to get that because I got a scratch, which you'll see later, because I didn't clear coat yet before I started handling this thing. So do that first. But this step bit works really great. Makes it real easy. All you need is a hand drill, and you want to mark your holes. Determine how many holes you want. Are you going to go with 3 holes total? That means adding 2 additional holes like I did. I'm still up in the air whether I need some additional buttons. Most likely I'm going to add 2 buttons on the front plate like I did on the Street Fighter. But you know, it's no rush to do it. And it's not that much of an effort to add it in later. But drilling these holes is pretty simple. So this first hole is for your joystick. And you just want it big enough so that this shaft can go in all 4 directions. And small enough so that the black cover plate there covers the hole and you can't see the hole under that. So be very careful not to go too big. Now with the buttons you will have to disassemble in order to fit them through the hole. And they said it's ideal for a 3/4 wood thick panel. The buttons are 28 millimeters, which equates to about 1 1/8 inch. So the stop bit has that marking on it. So put a piece of tape right above that, and that way you don't go too deep, because I went a little too deep. And I definitely recommend getting a template like this offline. Just Google for arcade key or button layouts, print this out, and then test it. Put it the way you want it. But I definitely recommend you getting a piece of painter's tape and taping it down before you start touching that with the drill at all. I didn't do that, so my buttons are slightly off from the way I wanted it. But I took a drill and just did some starter holes, and then once I had the hole started, then I put the stop bit on and went to work on it. So it works very well. You just want to be careful. You definitely don't want to make the hole too big such that the buttons are slip through. And you will have to flip the board over from time to time to make sure you're not going to mess up the edge. So take your time, be methodical, don't rush it, and they'll turn out perfect. But again, tape that thing down before you make your first hole, and you'll do well. This is probably the most difficult part of it, but you can see it's not that difficult, especially when you're using that stop bit. You know, so my holes were maybe slightly bigger than they should have been, and so you can see a little discolorment around the edge, but it's not that big of a deal. So once you got them in, just screw them in. Take the little black ring and screw them in tight. And then you can get to wiring these babies up. Now, the wiring is pretty simple. They don't have to, the wires don't have to be in any particular order. You can put it in either side on either pin. So no big deal. So just tighten these things up. And they don't take that much. You see how thick they are. You can put these things through any size wood. And I did this so because people may want to change boards later, or they might want to thicken this up. They definitely, you have room to grow with these buttons. But like I said, you do have to take off the one piece, and they're pretty simple to put back on. Just you have extras in your package, so you can just see how the markings are and see where the pins are to hold them together. No big deal. Again, it can look intimidating if you've never done it before, but no big deal. So see these little black pins? These are where the wires plug into, and these are the things that actually push the button. So you just got to get those in properly. Again, you got extra buttons, so just pull one out and see how it lines up, and be a piece of cake. It's 2 pins, one on the top, one on the bottom, on opposite ends, and you just line them up with the little hole there. See the little holes? Just line up with the little pin, and they'll just snap in. When it's snapped in properly, there's a little button that gets pressed when you press the button on the arcade button. Real simple. So the next thing to do is to get your encoder, your USB encoder. That's this piece here, and you can see this first row. That's where all of your joysticks, all of your buttons will plug in. Now I did use the 2 yellow buttons from the existing that came with the box. That's no problem. You can mix it. I want to try and keep it looking as authentic as possible. So those just plug in. It doesn't really matter which slots on that first row that they plug in, but you know, you can plug the yellow up in the first 2 slots, and then the other 3 buttons right behind it. Doesn't really matter. You're going to program what the buttons do inside of the Raspberry Pi, so that's not big the difference. Those 2 buttons are slightly different than the ones that we bought here, in that they just snap in. There's no screw cap to hold them together, so they will have to fit in the little grooves that are already there, so they have to turn a certain way. The red buttons, they don't have to turn any particular way. They just go through, and they're secured by the little black ring. So here you just plug these in that first long row. I think it's like 12 slots in that row. They'll click in with a satisfying click, let you know that they're in there firm. And so you have these extra packages, a big bundle and a small bundle. Because we're only adding 2 buttons, you don't even have to open up the other bundle yet. So untie these things. I don't know why they put these things where you have to cut against wires. I think that's so silly. They make it so tight. I think this extra bundle, I actually could pull them out without having to put a knife or something sharp next to these wires. I was able to slide them out. But again, doesn't matter which ends plugs into the buttons at all. There's 2 points that you plug in. Do it whichever way you want. Just do all of them the same way, just so cosmetically it looks nice. Once you plug those in, you just find an open slot there on that long row of open slots, and put them in. The only preference to where you would plug it in is when you think about where you're going to Velcro this encoder, where it's going to be located, because it will be a longer reach for some cables. So that's something you may just want to think about before you secure it. If you're thinking about putting in additional buttons, where might you put those in, and do you want to make sure this encoder is in the right spot so it gives you the ability to upgrade later without having to move it again? Because these adhesives, they work pretty good, but once you take them off, then they're pretty much shot. So as long as you don't take them off, they'll last a long time. So placement of that encoder is very key. You want to think about where you want to put it. So I put mine in a spot where it would allow me to put some buttons in a few different spots later on. And it won't be in the way. And some of these fits may be a little tighter. You may have to flip it around, but it's not complicated. Just flick it in. It has a very satisfying click when it goes on and all the way in. No biggie. Just take your time. There you go. That should be all 3 buttons. And now, like I said, just think about where you want to put this thing. Now, before we move on, I want to talk about this joystick. Now, I have one of these, I don't even know what you call those things, Scentsy things here. And I always have this excess wax that just, once the smell goes, is spent, it really has no use. So I've decided I would use some of it to hold my joystick in place while I positioned it for the holes. Because this joystick is a different size, you will have to drill some new holes. So I made sure this thing was lined up properly and centered, and that glue just gave me some time to let that set. Then I just put in my drill bit and just did my starter holes. It'd be much more difficult trying to drill the screws into this wood. So work smarter, not harder. Just do some small pilot holes. Don't take much to do in that spot. And like on my Street Fighter cabinet, I use some sticky, double-sided sticky plates, little small pieces to hold this in place. But this is just so that you can get those holes. Once the holes are set, it doesn't matter if it moves because your whole pilot holes are already there. Now you just screw in the screws and you're all set. Pretty simple. 4 screws and you're done. Now I could have used power drills here, but unless you have a longer bit on it, it doesn't. It's not a whole lot of work to screw these 4 things in. Not at all. I don't know. That seemed like that took forever, but it don't take that long. Let's screw these in. Also the direction that the joystick is in, it don't really matter because you're going to tell the joystick in Retropie what's up, what's down, what's left, what's right. So it don't really matter here. Alright, so now that's in. Got freedom of movement. Got your buttons in. Just cover that up. Screw on your top. Now, I originally put this bat top on, and it kept screwing off. It wasn't screwing off to the point where it would come off. It just was loosening, but it didn't really impact play. But I put the ball on, and I like it. These Velcro strip things are wonderful, man. I use this for all kinds of things. So I use that to screw on the encoder. I'm sorry, to secure the USB encoder. And I recommend the side with the little hard plastic hooks. I recommend that always being on the surface that doesn't move, and the fuzzy side, the hairy side of this tape be attached to the back of this encoder or the back of my speaker. The thing that's removable, the back of my Raspberry Pi, I put the fuzzy side there and the hard plastic hook side to be fixed, to be non-moving. Now I did put it here originally, but like I said, I had to think about that, and I ended up moving it later because that wasn't the right spot for it. You got to think about where the cabinet is going to sit as well. Now with the joystick, you have this 5-pin button. You have this cord that plugs in. That gives the power. This plugs into the Pi right there in the USB on the right side there. That will power up your joystick and your buttons. So I had to order this cable separately because the one that came with the joystick was designed to be soldered. So So these cables here, you can just plug straight into this encoder and you're all set. Now, this joystick on the parts list is adjustable from 8-way to 4-way, and by default mine was an 8-way, which you see here it appears to be a square or rounded square in the center. That allows that joystick to freely go to 8 different directions. That's not what we want in this vertical cabinet. So the way this works is you have to put your fingers behind the back. You face it so the word PC is shown on this plastic. PC is on the top. San Juan will be on the bottom. It's a little pin right here. This little plastic pin holds that little inner ring in place. If you push it the wrong way, that thing can come off and it's going to take a little work to get back in. So make sure you're not pushing the wrong way. You want to put your fingers behind it and push towards you. And right now, these little thumb tabs here, they're sort of on the numbers 9 and 3. You want to turn those to where they're like at 11 and 5, and you'll see that shape is quite different there. So it blocks the diagonal areas. So that's key, because this vertical box, most of the games are 4-way, and they'll make the games a lot more enjoyable if this joystick is properly aligned. But these are nice. Even the Street Fighter has these things here, and you can adjust it. It's nice if you're only going to have one cab and you want to play those other games. Yes, it's a little pain in the butt to open up the cabinet and make that switch, but it is possible, and it's better to have that option than to not. So now that the joystick is all set, this piece has to go down to the Pi, and so I decided to put the cover back on. So there's 2 cables that we want to make sure is accessible to reach this equipment back here. There's a little hole right there, so you want to feed that USB from the encoder and the power button from the built-in power switch through that hole, and then you just screw those screws back on. Now again, I recommend you already have applied your clear coat to the top of this joystick, so that you don't have to take all this stuff apart again like I had to do. So you can put all these screws back in, or just a few of them. It don't really matter. It's not going to be a whole lot of movement once this thing is in there. But it just makes it look much nicer when you look in the cabinet if this cover's back on, and there's no problem putting this cover back on at all. Once that's done, you just secure this control panel back to the arcade, and everything else is done in the back. So here's the speaker. I love this speaker here. It just looks nice. It's black, so it blends in with that top pretty good. Just take a couple pieces of Velcro, and you can install this pretty easily. It's not, you have a whole pack of this stuff. I used one pack across 2 machines, so I was getting a little sparse, but and I helped my daughter up at her job. They had one of those speed bumps for the wires, and I took a lot of it there and helped them strap that down so that the kids aren't tripping over it. Otherwise, I would have had the whole base of the speaker with a long piece of Velcro where it wouldn't budge at all. But mine's got a little movement because I only got 2 inch squares on both sides, and it's adequate, but you got plenty of yours, so do it so it's not going to budge at all. Only problem where this would become an issue potentially is if you had to move the cabinet a long distance. It may move, but since you have the step bit and it's in all different sizes, I decided to go ahead and drill a hole through the top and feed those wires from that speaker because on my Street Fighter, and originally on this box, I had it just going through that crack between this board and the other board, the back board. And while it was okay, this looks much better to make that hole and just feed the wires through. And I probably made this hole a little bigger than it had to be, but again, no big deal. And if I wanted to, I could cover that up with a little plug, but I think it looks much nicer to have those cords disappear down into the hole than to come around the back and then go down the slit. And for some reason I didn't use my tripod much for a lot of these portions. But real simple, just feed that through and hook it all up. And again, if you do this the first time, unlike me, I had to undo all my cables to fix this. But now you're seeing this video, you can do it right the first time. Alright, so here's the inside of the Galaga cabinet. We got our controller board for connection to the stock monitor, and that provides HDMI connection from the Pi, so the video and sound goes through the Pi, and that goes routed through the HDMI, and then the green cable there takes that sound to my speaker. So just like the Street Fighter cab, it's pretty empty inside. So just added 3 buttons for now, or added 2 additional buttons. This button was here, though that's a different type of button. Got a different 4-way. Should be able to switch it from 4 to 8. I'll have to play around with that one day. So just those 2 additional holes so far. Debating whether I'm going to put any coin buttons down here or not. Right now, I just made a select button player 2. Still got to get the power working. I did put the base back on the bottom. So as you can see down there, part J is covering up all that joystick wire. So it's a lot neater than Street Fighter. I'll have to do that there as well. So let me click it on here for now. Gets power to the Pi. And boot it up.
Bring the classic arcade experience home with Arcade1Up.
And that's it. Boots up to the normal mode, which is the kid mode. So it only lists 53 games right now. And I'll have to go through this list and clean this up as well, but it'll give you the video for each game. It's not laid out the best, this screen, as others would be, but it'll do. One day I'll poke around with it, figure it out. But there you have it. There's a modified Galaga cabinet. Now he's just like his modified big brother over there, Street Fighter 2. You get a scratch there. Use the original yellow buttons, just kept those there. Now, one issue I discovered very quickly with only having 3 buttons is that because it doesn't have a X or a Y button, because you have to choose one or the other, some of the RetroArch settings are not accessible, because normally if I was in a game, I could press the select button and X or Y to get certain functions to occur, and so I don't have that with missing that 4th button. So I'll have to decide how I'm going to handle that, or if I'm just going to break down and put another button here. I had some issues. You can see a little bit of color on the edge there where I might have made those holes just slightly too big. Come on. Oh, this game has always been so frustrating because they have this delay in the movement that's designed to kill you. I'm going to have to put a little glue on this. This keeps turning.
son of a... Thy game is over.
Hey, thanks for watching, guys. Smash that like button and make sure you make some comments down there. I want to know I'm doing the right thing for you guys out here. Thanks.